Hey, so we are in our conversations about dimensions of diversity, and I'm on my journey sharing from my experiences in Detroit to Washington, D.C. to Dubai. And one of the things that I noticed that, there's an aspect of diversity that we talk about a lot in terms of race. Black versus white was a big conversation for me when I was growing up in Detroit. And, so the early 70s, there were just Black people and white people pretty much in my neighborhood. And in particular, on my block, there were no other Black people. We were the first Black family to buy a house on that block. And at that time, in that era, we actually had language in the title paperwork of houses for sale that had language that said you shall not be sold to uh, these type of people, or no Black people could buy the houses. They would actually have those kinds of clauses. Now later those became forms of well, that was always a form of discrimination, but it actually was it became illegal to have statements like that. But so I grew up, and I think we got that house when I was probably the age of 4 or 5, and for at least 10 years in that house. Lived next door to neighbors who were Caucasian, who were white Americans, who were very racist, who had very strong beliefs that Black people did not belong on their block, Black people did not belong next door as their neighbors, and they had bad behavior to show it. They regularly called us names and threw things at us when we were in our yard, and they were a family of a mother. I think she's maybe a widower, and uh, 2 or 3 sons, I think. And so the sons were actually the age of myself, my brother, my sister. We were all about the same age, maybe a couple of years older than us. And they had the kind of behavior sitting on their back porch. We're all about, yeah, you N word. I won't say it here, but name calling, so that you don't belong, you need to be here, you need to go away, you need to. And that didn't impact me that much. I mean, it was unpleasant. I actually got kind of used to that. They were, for the most part, just had racist attitudes that they expressed with their mouths. Very, I didn't feel unsafe most of the time, although on occasion my brother or sister could have friends over that were attacked by these guys, that were not just name calling, but like, get out of here, and chasing people. But one of the things that stood out for me about that was at a young age, I was able to have it framed for me. My parents framed this conversation. They were like, those are some ignorant white people. They don't know what they're talking about, and this really has nothing to do with you. They just have views. They're entitled to their views, and they're ill-informed views, because they had their view that Black people were less than white people, that we were something closer to animals or something like that. But it was a great experience of being able to kind of watch behavior that was just that I just thought it was crazy. But to know that, okay, this has nothing to do with me. And so it was a very easy experience, in that I didn't make it anything about me. There was just crazy people who had some crazy views and lived next door, and they were loud and obnoxious at times, but that was all quote unquote over there on them. There's nothing about me that I internalized. There were no stories or conversations that I adopted to say something's wrong with me because they're name calling me or attacking me. And I think that I certainly appreciate and applaud that my parents said whatever they said to have me have that experience. I didn't feel demeaned or diminished. I did feel bullied, but I didn't feel any less than as a result of that kind of conversation. And I know that's not necessarily the common experience, especially for children that my age at that time. Again, this is the early 1970s. This was after the major riots. There were race riots in Detroit in the late 60s, and we moved to Detroit right after this. And I think that's one of the things that stands out for me when you're talking about diversity. when we look at these dimensions of diversity. Some of them are race is a very common one that gets talked about, but the question becomes, what is getting said to people, especially young people, about race and racism? And how do they recognize it? And how early do you have to have those conversations? And how easily can you frame the conversation to help a young person understand what's happening, why it's happening, and then for that young person to be able to kind of put the experience, to file it away in a place that works for them, that's empowering for them, that allows them some freedom in the face of this. I mean, these are our neighbors, so we saw them, three or four times a week. They're outside when we're outside, or they're visible when we're visible. So it's not like this random thing you experience once in a while. It was an ongoing, persistent kind of behavior and an experience, and that is kind of different from the kind of one-off of running into a situation at a store or mall or something where somebody is mistreating you, but it's isolated. But we know a lot of people have these experiences ongoing and regularly and persistently, and it's very easy to internalize these kinds of attacks and actually make them mean something about us, about who we are. I must not be good enough because if I were, this wouldn't be happening to me. Luckily, that's just not where I was in the conversation, and again, it's a testament to my parents. So the question is, when young people are having these kinds of experiences, who are the adults around them, and what is the conversation those adults are having to help put this in context for a young person, and to help talk about this in a way to have the young person understand what's happening, and that it has nothing to do with them, and that young person doesn't have to come away from these experiences with any diminishment, any feeling demeaned, and certainly not with any more long-term effects of, there's something wrong with me because of this. So I do offer that for us in the world of the conversation we're in for diversity, and which is right next to inclusion and belonging. How are you having the conversations? What are conversations you having for people who do experience racism, who have negative experiences as a result of some way that they are different from some majority group? And for young people, how often can there be interventions? How assertive, how alert, how attentive are the adults to be able to see when a conversation's needed, what is happening, when is the conversation needed? So I offer that for all of us. Be alert, be attentive, and be quickly responsive to the kinds of experiences that you're seeing young people have, so that you can actually frame them, so you can contribute to that young person and alter what becomes possible for them and their view of themselves as a result of experiencing racism. Thanks so much for being in this conversation with me. Feel free to subscribe to my channel. Make sure you're following me for the ongoing conversation, dimensions of diversity from Detroit, DC to Dubai. Thanks so much. Take care. Have a great day.